We're marking the death of South African human rights icon Archbishop Desmond Tutu this morning. Tutu died peacefully at a care home in Cape Town. He was 90 years old.
It's actually very sad, and I don't think not only for South Africa, but for Africa as a continent. We have lost a great icon, a father, a human who was there not just for the South African people, but for Africa as a nation.
Tutu was a hero of the struggle against apartheid and for equal rights. He was one of the most prominent black voices to speak against South Africa's racist regime through the 1980s. His authority as a leader in the church lent extra weight to his message of human dignity for all. We get more now from freelance reporter Mark Roughton in Cape Town.
Yes, Archbishop Emeritus Desmond Tutu, the passing is a very sad moment in South Africa, and it's not a surprise that he was ill. He was in fact diagnosed with prostate cancer back in 1997 already, and the last time he was seen in public was back in October. There was a Thanksgiving service at the St. George's Cathedral where he used to preach many years ago, and that was marking his 90th birthday. So not a surprise that the Archbishop has passed on, but it has been met with messages of condolences from all over the globe. And the things that are being said are just of the highest respect for a man who lived a life without compromise in terms of his principles. President Cyril Ramaphosa called him a patriot without equal. Within his own organization, some members have said that he was pretty much the last man standing amongst those who fought against apartheid in South Africa and helped build a democratic country back in the 80s and eventually realizing democratic elections in 1994. The Nelson Mandela Foundation called him an extraordinary human being, and that perhaps is a very brief summary, but the condolences and the messages are flowing in from all corners and all speaking very highly of the impact that Desmond Tutu had on South Africa and on the broader community worldwide.
And when we talk about that impact, what will he be remembered for?
The thing that stands out most about Archbishop Desmond Tutu is that he stuck to his principles, even if it went against the order of the day or what people felt. You know, there was a time when he was amongst the leading faces of the ANC and the fight for liberation, but just back in 2013, he himself said that he no longer supported what the ANC was standing for as the government of the day. He wasn't happy with the levels of corruption, with the violence and the inequality that we still experience in South Africa, and he felt that government, having obtained power in the country, were not doing enough to fight for those things. He's spoken out for gay rights over the years. He said, if God's a homophobe, I wouldn't worship him. And so he's been a man of strong principle, and surely at great price along his, during his career over the years, he's had to make changes and adjustments, but he has stuck by his principles, and for that I think he will be respected now that he has passed on.
And he was sticking by those principles under the most difficult of conditions as well. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, you know, the Archbishop, when he started out many years ago already, he opted teaching. That was his chosen career. And back in 1958, he actually quit teaching in South Africa because he wasn't happy with a system that taught, different race groups, different curricula, basically. And that's where his theology studies kicked off in 1962. He worked his way. He went overseas to study and came back to the country. But in 1980, when he'd reached a level of leadership within the South African Council of Churches, he then went and met with the state, the Prime Minister of the day, P.W. Botha, and fighting then already to end apartheid in South Africa and to speak for the oppressed in the country. His reward back then was the confiscation of his passport, but that was how he was just known to operate. As I say, even in 2013, when he spoke out against the governing party, the African National Congress, and said, look, I will not stand for what is happening in our country. Things need to change. So his legacy is one of speaking for those who are oppressed, speaking for the downtrodden, doing what he can to uplift the lives of those who need it most. His HIV/AIDS Foundation will continue to do their work after his passing, and the accolades have only been positive. The messages have only been wishing well to his family and loved ones who are left behind. But at 90, he's had a very strong innings and made an everlasting impact on this country. And possibly one of the most pivotal roles was as the head of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which was formed. And there was a time when he was the man who stood in the gap and said, look, we should not be looking at vengeance. We should be speaking peace and reconciliation and paving a way forward for what he called the Rainbow Nation, this South African democracy that so many had died for.
That was freelance reporter Mark Roughton in Cape Town. CBC's Peter Mansbridge sat down with Tutu for an interview back in the year 2002. Here is some of their conversation.
And when you look at the world right now, what worries you?
That we are taking a heck of a long time learning one lesson that God seems to be wanting to teach us, that we are family. There are so many ways in which that lesson seems to be having to be driven home. You look, say, at an environment. When somebody pollutes in one part of the world, we wish it could be quarantined and that they pay the price alone. But it isn't. It's the whole globe that has to run the gauntlet and pay the price. Terrorism, you discover, in fact, that you can't hope for one country, however powerful, to be able to combat terrorism. The conflicts. But it is basically that we are refusing to learn that our survival is going to happen the day we recognize we're made for one another, that we are made for family, that it's not just obscene to spend huge amounts of money on instruments of death and destruction when a small percentage of that would enable children everywhere to have clean water, enough to eat, etc., etc., etc. It makes the world so wholly unstable.